Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us here on this Thursday evening. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It is a good weather night for a launch, so hopefully folks that are in the area of Central Florida, as well as a little bit further out, will have some good launch viewing once this rocket takes flight. We'll talk more about this mission, of course, as we progress through the countdown, but just for a tease to trajectory, this will be mission heading due east as this Falcon 9 rocket's getting ready to deliver the Spainsat NG-2 satellite to a geosynchronous transfer orbit. As we're getting rolling here tonight, want to thank the more than 1,000 of you who are watching along with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage. Also want to thank our moderators in the chat, Jeff Hansen, Rick Donner, Aussie Space Girl, for joining us here this evening. Appreciate you for hanging out and helping to keep things kosher in the live chat. You can make their job that much easier just by following the rules of the chat. We ask that you post your message in English so that our mods can respond as appropriate. Also, that you hold off from delving into overt politics or religion and don't use all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't create a huge block of them so it takes up a large percentage of the chat and other people can see their messages as they flow throughout the course of the broadcast. And last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. All that said, we should be good for the duration of our coverage. I also want to thank one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, for being in the chat to help answer folks' questions throughout the broadcast. Speaking of channel members, this and every other live launch opportunity are made possible in no small part thanks to our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Jim Fowley, Angela Cagle, Space Coast Rocket Launches, Skunk Hogger PS4, Laced Fent, and many, many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and, of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. As we get rolling with our coverage tonight, I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor for running the technical operations of the broadcast. That is Mr. Stephen Young. Taking a look at our team of photographers here at Spaceflight Now, be sure to give them a follow at their handles. See them here for their accounts on X. John is at John Pisani Photo, Adam is at A Byrne NYC, and Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. Also, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook as well if you yourself are not on X. We're also joined with tracking assistance by our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs, whose camera view you're looking at right now, as well as Pete Karstens a little bit later in the broadcast. Want to welcome in new channel member Tom Donovan, joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level. Welcome aboard, Tom. We're glad to have you with us. Last little bit of housekeeping as we get things going here tonight. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space or spaceflight, or just want to offer a little bit of support for our coverage this evening, go ahead and follow the lead of folks like Kyle Y and Chuck Close using the YouTube Super Chat function. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. So thanks to Kyle Y for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you to Chuck for a $25 super chat. Really appreciate that, Chuck. K2 Hat with a $2 super chat saying thanks for the coverage. Hi from Mico, Florida. Hello, K2. And a thanks to Virginia Pruitt with a $10 super chat, one of our wonderful channel members, matched by another channel member and moderator Jeff Hansen. And Jeff says, go Cape, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go Spainsat, Godspeed 1076. Thank you for your service. Digging into that just a bit more for those unfamiliar, 1076 is the tail number for the Falcon 9 first stage booster that is flying this mission. And the last part of Jeff's message, if you haven't seen our preview story or tweets about this mission, SpaceX needs some additional boost power for this particular satellite launch. And so it's going to be flying a rare expendable version of its Falcon 9 rocket. So you'll note that there, as we switch the camera view here, maybe a little bit hard to see in this picture, but there are no grid fins. And zooming back out, you might be able to see that there are no landing legs on this booster either. This will be the 22nd and final time that SpaceX uses this booster before it is no more. We'll talk more about the flight history of B-1076 a little bit later in the broadcast. For now, though, let's go ahead and get you acquainted with the milestones that are still ahead of us as SpaceX looks to fuel and get ready to launch its Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40. Countdown begins, of course, with the SpaceX launch director making the call that they are, in fact, go for launch. This happens at about T-minus 38 minutes in the countdown. SpaceX does its readiness poll electronically, though, so if they're in a good position, they can take this a little bit earlier than the 38-minute mark. But once the clearance is given for the start of tanking, it will begin at T-minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene, the fuel on board the first and second stages of the rocket, and liquid oxygen at that point will also begin to flow on board the booster of the Falcon 9. Half an hour before liftoff, SpaceX starts to load a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes after that. Helium, of course, is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes is when the second stage RP-1 tank should be full. And T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is the start of the strong back chill down. SpaceX will be thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. We see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent that begins at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40, lasting about 4 minutes in duration until the big vent begins, T-minus 16 minutes. Moving right along, 7 minutes out, the engine chill for the Falcon booster gets underway. At this point, SpaceX is flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strong back. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, Control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch call, T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Currently targeting the opening of the window tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 01:30 UTC, just about 49 and a half minutes from now. Talking a little weather here at T minus 49 minutes and some change. 45th Weather Squadron forecast a greater than 95% chance for favorable conditions during this 4-hour launch window. Taking a live look at the most recent weather loop from the GOES East satellite from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. You can see very clear conditions over the Cape here tonight, and it looks like smooth sailing heading due east once the Falcon 9 rocket departs the pad here. So should be pretty nice launch viewing as well up and down the Florida coastline. Looks like there are just some light, thin clouds moving across the panhandle and over into the peninsula. So should be good launch viewing, maybe as far as Georgia, potentially up to the Carolinas if you've got good visibility up there. Again, this rocket will be heading due east once it departs Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I mentioned this is a rare expendable variant of the Falcon 9 rocket. In fact, last time that SpaceX expended one of its boosters, it was also at the request of the current customer today, that is Hisdesat. And that was for the launch of the first of these twin satellites called Spainsat NG, or Next Generation. The booster that is flying today, tail number B1076 in the SpaceX fleet, making its 22nd flight to date, so not quite enough to squeak into the Falcon 9 Frequent Flyers Club before its final mission here tonight. But here's what the list currently looks like right now. And barring significant changes to the launch schedule moving forward, we actually should see a little bit of a shuffle here. Well, not so much a shuffle as much as a new tie, since B1063 is set to make its 29th flight in the days to come before the end of October. Here's a look at the bar chart for SpaceX as of their launch yesterday. Starlink mission out at Vandenberg Space Force Base. That was launch number 133 for SpaceX as far as orbital flights go. Meaning tonight, with a good liftoff of this booster, SpaceX will tie the total number of all the Falcon 9 missions launched last year, or all the Falcon missions last year. Just under 46 minutes now at this point. Again, it's about T minus 38 minutes when the SpaceX launch director should make a call that they are go for prop load. While we won't have mission audio at that point in the countdown, because this is a customer mission, we may get a little bit of an earlier heads up on the start of fueling than we would for your typical Starlink mission. The spacecraft that is launching today is built on the Airbus Eurostar satellite bus. This vehicle is designed to have a roughly 15-year nominal operating life, and these two satellites are again launching into a geostationary space. This satellite will be deployed into a geosynchronous transfer orbit, and this particular satellite will operate at a 29 degrees east position, joining Spainsat NG-1, which lifted off on January 29th earlier this year and began operating at the 30 degrees west position on August 11th. Time now, T minus 42 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. Want to welcome in new channel member, Shelly R, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Shelly. We're glad to have you with us. Also want to thank Matthew Lowry for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Matthew. And also thank you to Michael McRory for $2 super chat, one of our wonderful channel members. Thank you, Michael. Good to see you this evening. I mentioned the trajectory for tonight's Falcon 9 launch is heading due east. Taking a look at the trajectory map here. It's a Google Earth view of Space Launch Complex 40, from which the Falcon 9 rocket's going to be departing in just about 41 minutes. Heading, as we mentioned, out due east as it flies away from Florida Space Coast. Not the most dynamic trajectory map, since there is no drone ship to reference tonight, as this is, as we've mentioned, an expendable Falcon 9 mission. However, not entirely an expendable mission, since SpaceX will still endeavor to recover the payload fairings currently encapsulating the Spainsat NG-2 satellite. Once they make their way back through the atmosphere, they'll make a final splashdown in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Once down in the waters, they'll be brought aboard one of the SpaceX recovery vessels and then brought through Port Canaveral off to the Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Just under 40 minutes to go now, and we're a couple minutes away, generally speaking, from the SpaceX launch director making the call that tonight they are ready to begin with prop load. Just under 37 and a half minutes to go before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. As we're getting ready to see the final voyage of B-1076, let's go ahead and take a beat to talk about its booster history before its finale. It started flying back on November 26th of 2022. That was in support of a cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station, the 26th for SpaceX in its commercial resupply services to contract with NASA. That was followed up by the launch of a batch of OneWeb, now Eutelsat OneWeb satellites that are still currently in low Earth orbit. This was flight number 16 in support of that constellation overall. This was the second flight for SpaceX launching these satellites back on January 10th. They're actually manufactured not too far away from where this rocket is getting ready to fly at the now formerly Airbus OneWeb satellites building, now just an Airbus building, as they've changed the name of the facade of that, done a little bit of expansion out that way as well, but I digress. Next up for this booster was the Starlink 6-1 mission on February 27th of 2023, followed up by a mission with a NASA rideshare payload, the Intelsat 40E/Tempo mission, launching again with NASA having that rideshare payload on board on April 7th, followed up by a series of Starlink missions. It's Starlink 6-3 on May 19th, 6-6 on July 24th, 6-14 on September 9th, 6-21 on October 5th. A pair of satellites for Luxembourg-based SES, The fifth and sixth O3B mPOWER satellites launched on November 12th with this booster, followed in January by the launch of the Ovzon 3 satellite. Popping in with another Starlink here, 6-40, as we should be at the start of fueling now. Fall is going well with this Falcon booster. Eutelsat 36D satellite was up next, followed by a pair of Starlink missions. One last turn of page for this booster. Turksat 6A communications satellite was up next, followed by the Worldview Legion 3 and 4 satellites on August 15th. A couple more Starlink missions for good measure, and then the Sirius XM or SXM-9 satellite, and then the final two Starlink missions before swan song of B1076 coming up tonight. If all goes well in just about 34 minutes. Just under 33 and a half minutes to go. We're zooming in on the base, the Falcon booster, while we await SpaceX confirmation that fueling is in fact underway, if it is in fact underway. Looking for signs of liquid oxygen flowing on board B1076. So we should start to see a bit of a frost line forming. Actually, as I speak. Latest update from SpaceX is that weather's looking good for a liftoff in less than an hour. That update coming about 13 minutes ago. So not a confirmation that fueling is underway, but a good sign that they feel good enough about the start of this launch campaign to post that tweet saying that they were less than an hour away. And it does look like we're starting to see that frost line form. Let's give it another beat. Yeah, I can see a little bit of vapor as well in that area of the rockets. So we feel confident in saying that SpaceX is, in fact, starting to tank its Falcon 9 rocket in support of this mission for Hisdesat. For those of you who are just joining us, we're approaching the final half hour before the liftoff of the Spainsat NG2 or Next Generation 2 satellite, the twin of the Spainsat NG1 satellite that launched to GEO back in January. That mission called upon the most recent expendable Falcon 9 rocket to launch, same as what we're about to see here in T minus 30 minutes and 5 seconds. Taking a look at our chat, appreciate the more than 1,900 of you who are watching along with us live as we're now at the top of the hour, just about 9 o'clock here on the East Coast, 0100 UTC for our friends around the world. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we cruise on through the countdown tonight. Want to thank a couple folks in the chat. Tim H with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Tim. He says, great night for a launch. Have to agree. And Bill in Lauderdale with a $5 super chat, who says, thank you in advance to the mods. And yes, big tip of the cap to our moderators for holding it down here in the live chat. Also, if you haven't already, let us know where you're watching from tonight. And we've got plenty of folks here in the Central Florida area. But I also know that we have a wonderful global audience. Let's see, Bill Kopp is checking in from Oceanside, California. Space Junk joining us from Stewart. Got Gainesville and Lakeland in the house. Rick Donner holding it down in Tennessee. Lots of Florida. Keith Savage up in the Carolinas. Jim Fowley in Hubbard Lake in Michigan. Always good to see. Time now about T minus 26 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. As we're getting ready to see the launch of this second and final satellite supporting this dual satellite system, let's go ahead and learn a little bit more about the Spainsat NG program, courtesy of this video from Airbus Defence and Space.
The Spainsat NG program will provide a sovereign, secure communications capability for government missions, with 2 new generation satellites based on Airbus's Eurostar Neo platform, which is developed under the European Space Agency's partnership projects. The Spainsat NG program is under the responsibility of Hisdesat.
Hisdesat is an international service provider of X and military Ka-band for government and military applications. Our role in the program Spainsat NG is to be the customer of the full program, including the space and ground segment, the launch, and the operation and exploitation of the satellite during 15 years lifetime.
What's unique about the Spainsat NG program is the PASIS 3 funding partnership model.
PASIS 3 is a financial scheme to develop the most innovative elements of the Spainsat NG payload with the support of the Center for Technological and Industrial Development, CDTI, in a framework of a private-public partnership between the European Space Agency and Hisdesat as an operator of the satellite.
The most innovative element of the payload is the X-band active antenna system, comprising both receive and transmit antennas.
Something as complex as the DRA's antenna in X-band, an active antenna that can move the pins electronically and can configure the pin electronically without any movement, is what makes this satellite the most advanced one in Europe today.
These active antennas are at the cutting edge of new technology, with beam hopping and geolocation capabilities enabling artificial intelligence, big data, and the Internet of Things on the ground. The antennas are being developed by Airbus, which is leading a consortium of 5 Spanish space companies.
The active antennas are already in production. Actually, they are in the assembly, integration, and test phase. That is the last phase before delivery of the antennas. It's done in Barajas site in Airbus Defense Space in Spain, and it will be delivered to Toulouse.
For Spainsat NG1, the mating between the communication module and the service module has taken place in Airbus facilities in Toulouse. This was the first step of the final satellite AIT phase.
The Spainsat NG program has been a very good example of institutional and industrial collaboration. In the industrial part, it has been a very good collaboration between the two main industries in Europe, being Airbus and Thales in space, including all the Spanish industries in this important program.
Airbus works to safeguard Europe's citizens and strategic autonomy. Through Spainsat NG, it will provide secure, resilient, and flexible communications for those who keep us safe.
Just under 22 minutes to go now, and we're coming up on the big vent here, which will start at T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. Part of the chill down process for the feed lines there at the pad before SpaceX begins to load liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. As we await that milestone, want to thank Monty Arnold for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Monty. Who says, got to watch my first Vandenberg launch last week. The sound was incredible. I'm very jealous. I've unfortunately not had the privilege of watching a launch from Vandenberg myself, so it still remains high on my bucket list. Big vent should begin in about 10 seconds. And there we go. Right on time. This vent lasts about 4 minutes in duration, again, setting the stage for upper stage lock load to get underway. Time now, T minus 17 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Got just about a minute remaining on the big vent here this evening before it wraps up and sets the stage for upper stage clock slow to begin. So far, a very smooth countdown towards the opening of the 4-hour launch window. Because SpaceX uses a load and go style of fueling, once tanking has begun, they do not have the ability to hold the count. So the fact that they are fueling now means that they are not choosing to use the remainder of the 4-hour window. And I think we're all happy to see that. Big vent should be trailing off here in about 10 seconds, wrapping up. With the conclusion of the big vent, again, second stage lock load is about to begin now in roughly 20 seconds. just under 15 minutes to go before we go ahead and get our pad level views, the Falcon 9 rocket. Got a quick celestial view to bring you right quick. Thanks to our friend Pete Karstens at Max Q Productions. You can see a view of one of the most popular gas giants. Got a nice view of Saturn and its rings there. Again, thanks to Pete Karstens. It's always good to make sure we're keeping track of what's happening with the Falcon 9 rocket, but when we are able to bring you some views around the solar system, we like to add that extra flavor to the broadcast. So appreciate you, Pete, for these out of this world views. T-minus 14 minutes and counting remaining to the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX's pad level views are now up, so go ahead and take a gander at what things are looking like there at Slick 40. Given how things went the last time SpaceX launched one of the Spainsat NG-1 spacecraft, we should be getting views from SpaceX throughout the course of the upper stage coast and through to spacecraft deployment. But in between SECO 1 or second stage engine cutoff 1 and the reignition of that Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage, we've got some launch replays to bring to you. So don't go anywhere, even though there isn't a booster landing to show you. We'll have some great views from our various cameras placed around the press site and elsewhere. With this close-up of the Falcon 9 rocket, you can see, as we mentioned, the Falcon booster sans the payload or the grid fins or landing legs. SpaceX commentator noting that the weather is good and the range is clear for a launch tonight, so things remaining on track. Talking about the Falcon 9 rocket, courtesy of these graphics, the vehicle is 70 meters or 229 feet in height with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The first stage booster B-1076 making its 22nd and final flight, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff through a combination of liquid oxygen and RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene. On board, above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. Atop the inner stage, of course, is the second stage, and the inner stage also houses the engine nozzle for the rocket's second stage. The Merlin vacuum engine powers the rocket's second stage, producing more than 220,500 pounds of thrust. There will be 2 burns of the upper stage engine to place the Spainsat NG-2 satellite on its geosynchronous transfer orbit trajectory. This photographic look back at the first mission that this booster launched and a little bit of a visual history for this particular first stage booster, 1076. "10 minutes out. In just about 3 minutes is the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster. note about the payload fairings that are flying today. One of them is flying for a 28th time, the other for a 16th time per SpaceX commentators. With just about 8.5 minutes remaining on the clock before a good liftoff, I want to thank the more than 4,600 of you who are watching along with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live watch coverage. Taking a look at our live chat here. See, we've got another one of our mods joining us tonight. Astro Joe, good to see you. And want to wish one of our channel members, Heidi McDaniel, a happy birthday. See, that's popping up in the chat. So, great way to end the evening with a nice big old SpaceX birthday candle. Just now, about 7 minutes to go. Again, the engine chill sequence is getting underway. In about a minute, the first stage RP-1 tank should be full as well. T-minus 6 minutes and counting. Less than a minute and a half, SpaceX will start to pressurize the tanks ahead of strong back retract. When the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Also want to wish a happy birthday to 10-year-old Belly, who's watching with her dad, John Barrett, out on the, looks like 528 near the bridge there out alongside the Banana River. Retraction of the strong back coming up next here. In just a moment here, we should see those clamp arms opening up. And yeah, you can see the one close to the camera in motion now, same as the other one. transporter erector now just starting to get into motion. This is just a slight reclining away from the launch vehicle. With about 3.5 minutes remaining on the clock, thanks to channel member Mitchell Wilbur for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Mitchell. Appreciate the support tonight. Who says, great weather, great coverage. Thanks, all. And as a reminder, with roughly 3 minutes on the clock, on the other side of liftoff, we'll have a collection of our various launch cam reviews to share with you all in a series of launch replays. So 3 minutes remaining. Even though we don't have a booster landing on deck, we will have that coming up for you in the aftermath of launch and stage separation heading into SECO 1. First stage, liquid oxygen tank is now full. Second stage LOX loading should be wrapping up here in just about 30 seconds.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that confirmation, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The additional venting you're seeing there at the pad are the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX releases the liquid oxygen from the feed lines. As we're approaching T-minus 1 minute, we should hear a call out that the Falcon 9 has entered into its automated startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that confirmation, we're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are, in fact, go for launch. Should come in the next few seconds.
Go for launch.
And with that good go for launch call, we're now just a little more than 30 seconds away from the flight of this expendable Falcon 9 rocket. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Spainsat NG-2 flight and the final mission for beat 1076.
As you can see, Falcon 9 has lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The Falcon flight computer will now begin throttling down engines in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Good call out there for a nominal state of the vehicle.
Vehicle is supersonic. Max Q.
As you just heard, we've just passed through max Q. Again, that is the maximum aerodynamic pressure the vehicle will experience. In order to achieve orbit and avoid being pulled back to Earth, the Falcon 9 rocket needs to reach a velocity of roughly 17,500 miles per hour horizontally. To assist with this, the first stage performs a gravity turn, initiated by a pitch-over maneuver just 10 seconds into flight. This is also the engines gimbal a small amount for about 5 seconds, slowly turning the first stage into an angled trajectory. This angled trajectory combined with gravity's pull will place the rocket into the final horizontal flight path. You can track our progress to orbit by keeping an eye on the first and second stage telemetry in the bottom corners of your display.
And a good flight so far, a little more than 2 minutes into this mission. Again, there's no booster landing today, but we're coming up on first stage main engine cutoff at about T plus 2 minutes and 39 seconds, followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. About 10 seconds to MECO. MECO. Stage separation.
Stage separation confirmed.
Main engine cutoff. And VEC startup.
And there you heard and saw those events that happened back to back: MECO, stage sep, and SES-1. As a reminder,
We're coming up to the fairing separation next, which is coming up in about 20 seconds.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a nice view of the Spainsat NG-2 spacecraft. Again, the fairing halves that flew today, one flying for a 28th time, the other for a 16th time. As we continue to track these upper stage views, we will have some launch replays for you coming up here in just a little bit, so don't go anywhere. Even though the Falcon booster is not performing a landing, we've still got plenty of good views to show you before we get our chance to see the deployment of this spacecraft. Confirmation that the first stage flight termination system has been safed. No longer needed at this stage in flight. Seeing the tracking view of the upper stage engine, the Merlin vacuum engine from our friend P. Karstens with Max Q Productions there in the box on your left, and the onboard camera views from SpaceX on your right. The telemetry data that's on your screen is exclusively related to the Merlin vacuum engine, of course, since SpaceX is not attempting to land the first stage booster B-1076. Roughly 6 minutes into the mission now, still getting some great tracking views from our friend Pete. Want to thank Bakamitai for being a member with us for 6 months at the PAL leader level, who says, here's to 6 months. And here's to 6 minutes so far on this Falcon 9 mission. The next big milestone coming up will be second stage engine cutoff, or SECO 1. That's coming up just before the 8-minute mark in this flight, so less than a minute and a half from now. At that point, the upper stage will enter into a coast phase until about T plus 26 minutes and 51 seconds, so a roughly 20-minute long coast. There will then be a 1-minute burn to put the upper stage on the correct geosynchronous transfer orbit trajectory. And then the Spainsat NG2 spacecraft will be deployed at T plus 35 minutes and 55 seconds. Upper stage now in terminal guidance, so approaching the end of this initial burn. The engine is preparing to shut down and enter into a coast phase.
After that, we're going to look for confirmation of good orbital insertion. The MVAC engine is optimized to operate in space, producing...
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
There you just heard that our Stage 2 FTS has safed. As I was saying, the MVAC engine is optimized to operate in space, producing 220,550 pounds of thrust in vacuum, and is designed to be stopped and restarted multiple times.
MVAC shutdown.
And there you heard the call.
Good confirmation of second stage engine shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And a confirmation of a nominal orbit insertion. All good calls, all good updates, and the glow of the Merlin vacuum engine will start to fade away as this upper stage begins its coast phase. Again, the next burn for this engine coming up in about 18 minutes or so at this point. That'll be a 1 minute long burn, just a little bit more than a minute in duration to, again, put this upper stage on the correct trajectory. Some nice views of the Spainsat NG2 spacecraft. It's heading up to meet its partner in crime, which is currently up in geo right now. It launched back on another Falcon 9 rocket. In fact, the last expendable Falcon 9 to fly in January of 2025. That particular spacecraft began operating at the 30 degrees west position on August 11th, and Spainsat NG2 destined to operate at 29 degrees east, with the pair having a nominal operating life of 15 years. These twin spacecraft were built on Airbus Defence and Space's Eurostar Neo satellite bus. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 50 meters or 164 feet. And fueled up as they are right now, they have a wet mass of about 6.1 tons, which is roughly 13,400 pounds. Again, we're working on those launch replays for you. Should have them ready coming up in the next couple of minutes here. Just taking a look at our live chat to see if there's any additional comments or queries as we're waiting those replays. Looks like some folks got good views both here in Florida as well as far away as looks like TFG says, nice sight across the low country in South Carolina. Linda Willis was able to see it from Jacksonville, which is great. Florida History Hunter got some good views from over in DeLand and some good video footage. Yeah, tag us on social media. You can find us most places just simply at Spaceflight Now. It's always great to see what you're able to capture from these launches. You can always head over to our website anytime, day or night, spaceflightnow.com, and check on the launch schedule tab to see what's coming up around the corner. Of course, we're continuing to watch the status of the H3 rocket from Japan, which is set to launch the first flight of an HTV-X cargo vehicle to the International Space Station. They were facing some bad weather, which caused the initial launch delay. Coming up next, we should have a launch from Vandenberg on the 25th. Set to be the Starlink 11-12 mission. And about a day later will be the next flight from here in Florida, the launch of Starlink 10-21. Plenty else interesting going on here around Florida's Space Coast. Of course, in the over the weekend, the Orion spacecraft for the Artemis 2 mission was stacked atop the Space Launch System rocket, the last big piece that was needed for the first crewed flight of the Artemis program, set to launch in early 2026. Also coming up around the corner, we've got a couple of non-SpaceX players that are hitting their launch pads. The launch of the Viasat 3 F2 mission, set to lift off on November 3rd. ULA confirming that its Atlas V rocket is getting ready to support that mission with a liftoff between 10:36 and 11:20 p.m. Eastern. That's 03:36 to 04:20 UTC on November 4th. So another good nighttime launch with the Atlas V flying in the 551 configuration, nicknamed the Bruiser. They've got 5 solids, in addition to the RD-180 engine at the base of the Atlas V rocket. So should light up the night sky pretty nicely when it lifts off. Again, that's coming up on November 3rd. Looks like we've got our launch replays ready for you. Let's kick things off with the fixed view from our Adam Bernstein. Just having a quick technical issue, folks. Got it right now. Moving on to the wide view of the press site. Got a Pete's tracker from the south. Now to the wide tracker from Pete. As we continue to watch this tracking view from Pete, want to thank Mike M for a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate the support tonight. Next up is Merritt Island Tracker from Chuck and Jen Briggs of C&J Images. Here's a look at John's wide tracker. Coming up on 26 minutes into the flight, and we're approaching the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine for about a minute-long burn.
We'll be expecting this call out coming in just about 30 seconds.
MVAC startup.
And as you just heard, our Merlin engineering team has confirmed that we have power on the second stage engine. This burn will last approximately 67 seconds, typical for a geostationary transfer mission. If you watch the speed gauge on your screen, you'll see us adding over 2,500 meters per second to the velocity of the second stage and the Spainsat NG2 payload. Maximum acceleration during this burn will reach 4.8 Gs as the remaining propellant is burned off. Stay tuned for second engine cutoff, or SECO2.
MVAC shutdown.
And with that second engine cutoff, or SECO2, we're just a few minutes away from payload deploy. We're going to take one more short break until that event, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 minutes.
And we're going to go ahead and pick things back up with our launch replays with a look at Adam's tracker from here at the press site in just a moment. Just taking a quick look at the Spainsat NG2 satellite first. Time now T plus 31 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Coming up is the final stage of this mission, the deployment of the Spainsat NG2 spacecraft, which is coming up at about T plus 35 minutes and 55 seconds or thereabouts. Upper stage got some sunlight on it now, casting some very dark shadows from that perspective. Looks like the sun is on the other side of the engine nozzle. And a good deployment of the Spainsat NG2 spacecraft.
Payload deploy confirmed.
And there.
This spacecraft's now heading into a geosynchronous transfer orbit. With the deployment of the last Spainsat NG spacecraft back in January, it took till about August for it to reach its orbital destination. So likely will take about the same time scale for this spacecraft to reach its orbital destination as well and enter into service. Based off of that look at the globe at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it looks like deployment was above the island of Madagascar. And with a good liftoff and, of course, no landing of this booster since it was the final flight of B-1076. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up. But before we get to our mission stats, as we would normally close out the show, we've got some nice views around both the Space Coast and Central Florida of a little bit something extra to show to you. Our photographers Michael Kane and John Pisani were able to capture Comet Lemon. Show you this first view from the vehicle assembly building and give you a pass if you can't tell exactly where it is. So we'll punch in just a little bit. You can see leaving part of the corner of the vehicle assembly building in the frame so you get a frame of reference. It's the green tinged dot in the upper left-hand corner of this frame here. So back out, show you what it looks like full frame, and then punch it back in there a little bit closer. And then one more for you from our photographer, Michael Kane, a nice view of the Falcon 9 launch heading into that geosynchronous transfer orbit from a little bit further flung away. Nice view along the river. And with that, let's go ahead and turn now to our mission stats as they currently stand. This was the 22nd and final flight of B-1076. That was the 551st Falcon 9 launch to date, the actually 134th of the year so far. This was the 486th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 167th orbital launch within the last 365 days. The 286th orbital launch from SpaceX, lifting off from Pad 40, and the 341st overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's a look at the bar chart now. SpaceX tying all of the missions they accomplished last year with this flight. Moving on to some industry stats, since there are no recovery stats to remark on this mission. This was the 88th orbital launch from Florida, the 141st from U.S. soil, the 154th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 241st orbital launch around the world. There have been 5 orbital mishaps so far this year. Here's where the pie chart now currently stands. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wind things down. Certainly want to thank our moderators in the live chat who've been helping us out throughout the course of the broadcast. To Jeff Hansen, Rick Donner, Astro Joe, Nazi Space Girl, thanks so much for helping out tonight. Also, thanks to channel member Cumulus Granatus for helping answer folks' questions in the chat. Big thanks to our photography team around Central Florida, to Michael, Adam, and John for doing some stellar work tonight. And thanks as well to our friends Pete Carsons with MaxQ Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with CNJ Images. Thanks as well, certainly, to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast this evening. And a big thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. We certainly appreciate your time and attention, and we look forward to welcoming you back in when next we have a launch to cover. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.